Egio Satanas, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite dark sorcerer here. And today I'd like to do a book review. Now, as most of you know, I had been heavily influenced by necromancy over the last year and 8 months. Okay. And I've really been dedicated to the necromantic practices since January of this year, when I fully dedicated myself as a practicing necromancer. I put out a lot of good material that I've researched and referenced, cross-referenced in the whole king caboodle within videos of the past, from herbalism to historical accounts, the different definitions that make up necromancy, and a whole bunch of other wide spectrum of influences, okay, and where they are practiced. So today I thought I would start by recommending some books for those of you who want to dedicate yourself to necromantic rites and rituals. So, Necromancy, the Forbidden Art by Lucifuge Rofocale. Okay. This book, in my opinion, is right up there with the Greek and Roman necromancy. Now, this book here was published in 2008. Okay. Very, very, very good things out of this book. And I've had this book for a while, too. So, I mean, it's been sitting on the shelf in my personal library for just about 10 years now, since the first time I started delving into necromancy. So, anyways, let's start off by my personal views of this book. The personalized views that I have on this book is it is dead accurate. Okay. He drops down information from various different, a lot of them lead you into other areas. Okay. One of which is the art of dying. Okay. Nowadays referred to as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, to Homer's Odyssey, to various other sources. And mostly it is revived around the Greek and Egyptian perspectives of necromancy, but also a little bit of Roman influence. But the thing that I found interesting most of all is he doesn't just go into the practice from a historical setting, like say the Hellenistic period, or that of the Greek, spiritual path workings. He goes into a wide range from various different sources, from Middle Eastern to Greek and Roman to Egyptian and so forth. Not just into Tibetan perspectives of the soul, but he also breaks it down and describes what a necromancer is. He How to make contact with spirits, and a lot of other things that I found very intriguing, including some prayers, or what I would call them prayers, I guess you would say. I wouldn't call them, actually, I wouldn't actually classify them as prayers. For an example, on page 39, places of this kind are best known by the meeting of nocturnal visions and incursions, and such like phantasms, burial places, places of execution, or where the carcasses of the slain, not as yet expiated, nor rightly buried, were some few years since put into the ground for expiation and exorcisation of any place, and also the holy rite of burial being duly performed to the bodies, oftentimes prohibiteth the souls themselves to come up, and driveth them farther off the place of judgment. Now, this was Tyson, around the 605 area. Not sure if it's something based off a scroll or a text, but the insights of how necromancy was actually seen and performed back in the day, roughly about 1500 years to 1000 years ago, how it was related to shamanism, how a lot of good places to call on and conjure spirits were from graveyards, forest battlefields, and such. So most likely it was around the time of the Hellenistic period. So I mean, in that region of time. I mean, you can even go to 606 by Tyson. And the wicked and impure souls violently plucked from their bodies, and of men not expiated and wanting burial, do stay about their carcasses, and are drawn to them by affinity. The witches easily abuse them for the effecting of their witchcrafts. Tyson 606. Okay, and that was on page 42, whereas the last one was 39. Okay, so you can see why I actually enjoy this, because number one, I love history, and I love going back and delving into the areas or the regions of the world where these types of practices were mentioned, where they were practiced, and most importantly, how they were viewed, because it gives you a sense of being in that time frame and where or how everything was not only perceived but went down and transpired to the way it was executed. Okay. And like I said, he goes into a lot of other things like initiating contact. And he says here, I anoint my forehead that I may gain awareness of the dead. I anoint my mouth that I may converse with the dead. I anoint my heart that I may understand the dead. Okay, and this is under initiating contact, page 64 and 65. Okay, but if you go to page 67, it says here on the sacred threshold where spirits and flesh unite, I call on you, basically the spirit's name. I ask that you join me this night. I call to you across the veil. Make your presence known to me here. Be my companion in shadow. Reveal yourself through the scrying mirror. Okay, so you're basically making contact through the black scrying mirror, which was actually identified as the mirror of Lilith out of the Munich manuscripts. And I found that very, very interesting. And he even, on page 73, he even gives it a different spin-off too. So I mean, there's a lot of different methods that he utilizes, but it was the history that attracted me to this. It was the way it was written, the different methods, the spirit bottle to the flute and bone. And this was actually underneath the title. Let me go to the next page here. I just went one page too many. Tools of the Necromancer on page 79. Now, this book here has a total of 116 pages. The last few pages were of various different books that you could reference and look into, such as, let's see, starting on page 110, Embracing the Darkness, The Mirror Blackly. Okay, that's done by Corvus Nocturnum. He is a great author that I do recommend. He definitely knows his stuff. Promethean Flame by Corvus Nocturnum. The Haunted Dreams by Michelle Belanger. Love her work. Psychic Vampirism, The Vampire Codex. Very, very good book. Her Dictionary on Demons, Names of the Damned. Very insightful. Will open you up to a lot of different things. Sacred Hunger by Michelle Belanger. This Trembling Flesh by her as well. So, I mean, you got other things that you can reference right from this book alone, not just from what I've mentioned of Homer's Odyssey or The Art of Dying. But he also goes into the Egyptian variation as well from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. He also mentions the Torah, okay, which is the first 5 books of the books of Moses, okay? And these are the first 5 books of the Bible, the Christianized Bible, just to let you know. And he goes into, like I said, it's called the Bardo Thadol. That's Thodol. Okay, Bardo, Bardo. Okay, Bardo Thadol, otherwise known as The Art of Dying and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And the thing I liked about that is because when I first got my hands on this book and I read about this, The Art of Dying, I wanted to know more of it. So I ended up contacting my local library, and they ended up getting their hands on not just the book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which was actually a copy of it, but they also mentioned to me that they could actually get the essays that went along with it that were not incorporated into the main book itself. I mean, think about how often that happens, okay? That happens quite a bit, especially through the JCI, but still, you got like 8, 9 books of Moses, and yet only 5 are in the Bible. Think about that. How many grimoires were written by the so-called saints? That the disciples of Jesus Christ. For just to name one character. Okay, his disciples, and yet only 4 out of how many were actually incorporated in the Bible. So you have to actually go out and look into these things. And the thing I like about some of these books, like this one here, is that he doesn't just talk about from one region. He goes into numerous regions. He literally brings you into the sources and how they were perceived. Now, The Art of Dying was more psychological and spiritual in nature. Think of it from a contemplative perspective, okay? What happens to the soul after you die? Now, according to Christianity, your soul remains in the body until the end of days or until a time of tribulation. Okay, this is where you are judged in front of the 4 main thrones. Okay, and the Great White Throne is the one that you really don't want to be in front of, right? Because then that means you're going straight to hell in the handbag. It's a one-way ticket downtown. Okay. Now, if you go into Satanism, for an example, one of the Myrmidon Pontifex Maximus in his book Tentatio Diabolis, better yet known as the first book within that 3-book series, which was actually known as the Unholy Bible, okay, or the Devil's Bible, I should say. He wrote a prayer to both Satan and Lucifer in this, and it was very, very insightful. And he says, "When I leave this world, bring my soul to your kingdom, bring my soul to hell, drag my soul to hell, because that's where I wish to be." Okay, so basically, it's he's reciting the fact that you have a choice to dwell with the demons. You have the choice to dwell in hell, in the lands of shadow, or what is now known as the realms of chaos. Okay, and you get to learn and dwell in his kingdom for all eternity, being a foot soldier or a demon under his mighty ranks. So there's a lot of different perspectives of the soul. But what happens when we get into occultism, like say, um, let's go with Hermetism or Quabbalistic. Think about it from this perspective. There are different steps within the tree of death or the tree of life. The same amount, 10. 10 steps going up and down, or down and back up. The rite of ascension or descension. So when we get into, say, the microcosm versus the macrocosm, think of Jacob's ladder. Okay, when you die, it's like a massive explosion, like a cosmos or a galaxy being eradicated, and you're forced out into the abyss or the empty wastelands, and you have to find your footing. If we follow Lovecraft's perspectives on this, just out of an example, there are different realms, there are different levels. Okay, the nine choirs of heaven and hell. What if these are ascension and descension? Because it says, and I quote, that there are 9 realms between the throne of God and our realm, and likewise in mirror image between our realm and the throne of Satan. Okay, so if we go by Dante's Inferno, there are different levels of purity. There are different challenges, different levels of sin, more harshly attributed than the last. So I mean, there's a lot of context out there just defining what the soul is, not just psychological or philosophical, like say Edgar Allan Poe or Friedrich Nietzsche, okay, or even that of say the um, the story of a drowning woman. Okay, you look at the male compared to the female stories of just the ascension and descension aspects into the underworld. In the female sense, like Persephone, Astarte, Hecate, Erishkigal. Each level of hell, they'd remove an article of clothing, becoming more and more pure or true to who they really are. Okay. And by the time you're at the very base in front of the devil, you are literally in your most purest state. If we go by the biblical account, basically you're like, oh, I ate there of the apple. Oh crap, I'm naked. Um, you know what I'm saying? So, if we continue following this, and we go into the nine, say for example, Dante's Inferno, he was associating sins with devils. Okay, where he was referring to a cardinal that had wronged him repeatedly. And basically, through this, what is now classified as Dante's Inferno, the classic play, was actually a method utilized or employed to show this cardinal the error of his ways. Each sin that you have committed against me, according to your works, you have committed all of these, and each one will lead you to the very bowels of hell itself. But if we go into, like I said, philosophical or psychological, what is the soul? Is it the macrocosm that you're unlocking through meditation, through rituals, or through the very practices that we do as career black, dark sorcerers? Maybe even practitioners of, say, shamanism. Whatever one that whatever path or root working that you are called into, that you feel drugged into, a part of. What is the soul? Is it your consciousness? I mean, Andrew Womack broke it down into mind, body, and soul or spirit. And the way he put it is the mind is the consciousness. Okay. The body is the physical, and the soul is literally the godhood, is the essence of who you are. So, how do you define the soul? How do you define death? How do you define reincarnation according to Zen or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Art of Dying, the Bardo, the Doll? Okay, that's what I liked about this one topic. Later on, as necromancy grew and went from nigromancy to necromancy, from either the I or the Y, and then to the necro aspect, going from Greek, Nikia, into nigromancy, to the different two spellings of that, with the NI or that of the NY, and then finally to today's practice, necromancy, the art of divination by the dead or corpse. The lick, the leech, necromancer. We see different characteristics here. We see how you can summon a spirit through conjuration. And it's basically the soul is just floating out there somewhere in a different, alternative reality or a different dimension. And you're calling them forth or petitioning them to come forth so that they can commune with you and answer a specific question. Or you have the other aspect, such as what Francis Barrett recommends and spoke on within the Magus, Volume 1, the Intelligencer. And he states that the other aspect of this is rejuvenation. This is literally where you bring the soul of an individual into their own body and or a different corpse in general for various different aspects. If we go into hoodooism, they need the body. The Bokor needs the body or the soul. Okay. Basically, they need a drone, somebody that they can control and utilize until there's time to say, screw you. I don't need you no more. Okay. Or is it the creation process, such as the golem in Jewish mythology? Just about every pantheon from Egyptian all the way up into European speaks on various agents of death: the vampire, the lycanthrope, the ghoul, the wraith, the banshee, the Sith or Sidi, the Dralith, otherwise known as the Elven. Okay, so many different spirits. Not just a black dog. These are souls. These are spirits. The manifestation of these things. But how do we define them as practitioners? Or what about if you were just simply a ordinary person? When you go to church, who do you think you're praying to? You're praying to a soul, a spirit of a man, long past dead, deceased, vigor mortis, corpse, cadaver. You're practicing a form of necromancy. Okay? And understanding the soul is a great way to understand who you are and what you're about, not just bettering your understanding of the different realms. You consider even the medical field has brought people back from the dead through necromantic rites and rituals. They even utilized freezing water to electrocution to start the heart or to terminate a life, right up to the point of realigning your thought forums. So, how do you define necromancy? Herbalism, concoctions, oleums, powders, oils, brews, to rejuvenation of corpses, to spiritual conjurations, to medical applications. How do you define necromancy? It begins with this book here. It begins here. constructing the vessel, the spirit bottle, the offering bowl. So many tools, the constructions of things. How do you define necromancy? How do you define the history of it if you're unwilling to delve into it? Hello, Holly. So, my book recommendation for today is Necromancy, the Forbidden Art. I would also recommend comparing this to different regions of the world because there are necromancers out there and practitioners who have done unquestionable and how should I say this, amazing things within this field throughout history. The Witch of Endor is the most commonly referenced practitioner of necromancy. She's even mentioned in the Bible. Christian Day mentioned her. Lucifuge Rofocale mentioned her. I recommend this book to all of you. It is very insightful, thought provocative, and it will drive you into both mythological and historical research into other regions of the world that will blow your mind. I recommend it highly to you. All right. You can find this book on eBay, Amazon, probably get it through just about any bookstore, I think. But the best place to go for it would be Amazon. If not, Amazon.com, eBay.com. It runs roughly anywhere between 10 to 15 bucks. I think I bought mine for like 12 bucks. And in a bookstore, this would be roughly, let me see, $9.99. Yeah, about $9.99. I do recommend this book. I hope you go out and look at it, get it, read it, study it, look up the materials in it, even the individuals. You can look up every individual in there. It's right on Google. You can go to your local library and pull up the names, pull up the era of which it was spoken of, and research it. Very, very informational, enlightening. I love it. What's that old lyric from that song? I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. Yeah, I love these books. I love the research and the knowledge. So I hope this has been intellectual. I hope it's been educational. I hope you go out and find it and get it. I hope you delve into it and research everything in it. I did. I loved it. I learned a lot from it. And it opened my eyes into areas that I didn't know existed yet. So, with that said, I want to thank Holly for coming on board here during this video. And for those of you who simply liked this video, thank you for coming on with me. And until next time, have a good night or a good day, depending on where you are in the world. All right? Have a good one.